During an extravagant Hawaiian vacation, my fiancé and his family expected me to foot every bill because I was lucky to join their clan. When I refused, he grabbed my wallet and tossed it into the ocean with a smirk. I calmly sipped my Mai Tai and said, "Hope you can figure out how to fly home without me." His cocky smile disappeared as reality sank in. I'm Emma, 29, a marketing director, who's worked relentlessly to build a comfortable life. When my fiancé, Jake, 33, suggested a week in Kauai with his family to celebrate our upcoming May wedding, I was ecstatic. Imagine it. A magnificent beachfront villa, waves crashing nearby, private chefs creating poke bowls and hosting luau's under starlit skies. A dream getaway before wedding madness consumed us. I'd been saving for months, picturing us with tropical drinks in hand, gazing at the endless Pacific. But dreams have a way of shattering, don't they? Jake was all charm and dimples, the kind of guy who sweeps you off your feet and keeps you suspended until you realize he hasn't held a job in nearly a year. His family appeared wealthy, or at least acted the part. His father, Dylan, owned a chain of furniture stores across Washington, while his mother, Vivian, dripped with pearls and judgment. They're the type who consider driving a hybrid car a desperate plea for attention. Me? I grew up in a modest duplex in Boise, waiting tables on weekends to pay tuition. I clawed my way into an executive position, but to them, I was just the lucky girl who snagged their golden child. The plan seemed straightforward, a pre-wedding bonding trip. Jake sold it enthusiastically. "It'll be incredible, babe," he said with that smile I fell for 3 years ago. "They just want to welcome you properly." I believed him, packed my swimwear, and boarded the plane, ignoring my gut feeling that something wasn't right. His family always had this edge, smiles never reaching their eyes, comments landing like subtle cuts. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just their style. Love blinds you, right? As our flight touched down in Kauai with the sun dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink, I couldn't shake the feeling that this paradise was about to transform into something else entirely. I was right. We arrived at the estate just as darkness fell. It was breathtaking. Teak floors, glass walls framing the ocean, an infinity pool seemingly spilling into the waves. I was still buzzing from the flight, imagining lazy mornings with Jake, when Vivian swept in wearing designer clothes and a tight smile. "Oh, Emma," she said, eyeing my sundress. "That's a cute little position you have. Marketing, right? Keeps you occupied, I'm sure." Her tone carried something I couldn't quite identify, but it stung. Jake chuckled, slinging an arm around me like we shared some private joke. I forced a smile while my stomach twisted. That first night, we attended a luau. Torches flickering, hula dancers swaying, air heavy with roasted pork and tropical fruit scents. I was photographing fire dancers when Dylan slid the bill across the table. $500. Your family now, Emma, he said, leaning back in his chair. Pitch in. I blinked, waiting for someone to laugh. But Zoe, Jake's sister, just sipped her piña colada with a smirk. Jake didn't even look up from his plate. I paid, assuming it was a one-time thing, but my chest tightened. This wasn't the welcome I'd imagined. The next morning, I found Jake by the pool scrolling through his phone. "Hey," I said, sitting beside him. "Why did your dad hand me the bill last night?" He shrugged without meeting my eyes. "They paid for my college, babe. You earn way more than I ever did. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal? I'd been covering our rent, his car insurance, even his craft beer obsession since he quit his sales job to find himself. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd step up eventually. But now, lounging in this mansion his parents supposedly funded, he acted like I owed them for his privileged existence. I tried to let it go. The beach called to me, crystal water, warm sand between my toes. I swam past the breakers, letting the waves wash away my unease. But at dinner, it happened again. Another bill, $1,300 for sushi and sake, pushed my way. Vivian murmured something about team effort, while Zoe added, "You're so good at handling things, Emma," in a syrupy fake voice. I paid again, jaw clenched as my savings app flashed a warning. Jake squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Thanks, babe," like I'd done him a favor. By the second night, I couldn't sleep. The ocean roared outside, but all I heard was Vivian's condescension, Dylan's entitlement, Jake's excuses. I sat on the balcony staring at the moon's reflection, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't just annoyed, I was furious. I'd worked nights to earn my degree, skipped vacations to build my career, and here I was bankrolling people who treated me like their personal ATM in a tropical setting. Jake's family didn't see me as his fiancé. They saw me as a walking checkbook. And Jake? He wasn't defending me, he was enabling it. I went back inside, pulled out my laptop, and checked my accounts. The numbers stared back at me, much smaller than they should have been. I'd been so caught up in wedding plans, venue, flowers, that ridiculously expensive dress, that I hadn't noticed how much I'd let slide. Jake hadn't contributed a penny in months, and now his family was bleeding me dry on their turf. I closed my laptop, hands shaking. I wanted to scream, but held back. Instead, I promised myself I'd play along a little longer, but I wasn't here to fund their paradise vacation. They'd figure that out soon enough. By day 3, the cracks weren't just showing, they were gaping wide open. I woke to Jake planning a snorkeling trip, voice bubbling with excitement as he booked it over the phone. "We're swimming with sea turtles today," he announced like a child on Christmas morning. I smiled, thinking maybe this was the bonding moment I'd been waiting for. We piled into a boat, the water so clear I could see fish darting below. It was magical, until the captain handed me the bill. $800 for 6 people. Dylan clapped my shoulder. "You've got this, right, Emma?" Zoe grinned, adjusting her sunglasses. Jake just nodded like it was already decided. I paid, but my throat tightened. This wasn't a one-time occurrence anymore. Later, we took a helicopter tour. Jagged cliffs, cascading waterfalls, the island unfolding like a postcard below us. I was snapping photos when the pilot passed me the receipt mid-flight. $100. Vivian leaned over. "So generous of you to treat us." Her smile was sharp, predatory. I swiped my card, hands trembling, and stared out the window. The view blurred as my mind raced. How had I let this spiral so quickly? That night at the estate's bar, Zoe ordered rounds of cocktails. $115 each, 5 rounds deep. The tab landed in front of me yet again. "You're so good with money," she purred, sipping her drink. I glared at Jake, waiting for him to intervene. He didn't. "Don't make it weird, babe," he muttered. Weird? My savings were hemorrhaging, and he was casually sipping a Mai Tai. I cornered him by the pool after midnight, everyone else asleep. "Jake, this has to stop. I'm not paying for everything." He rolled his eyes, lounging on a deck chair. "You're overreacting. My family's always lived like this. Someone handles it. You've got the cash, so what's the problem?" The problem? I'd been covering our entire life back home while he figured things out, and now I was financing their vacation too. "I didn't sign up to bankroll your family," I snapped. He smirked. "Don't embarrass me, Emma. You're marrying into this. Act like it." His words hit like a slap. Marrying into debt and disrespect? The next day, I tried setting boundaries at breakfast. Fresh papaya and acai bowls. "I'll cover myself today," I said firmly. "You all can split the rest." Silence. Dylan coughed, Vivian raised an eyebrow, and Zoe scoffed. "Wow, stingy much?" Jake squeezed my knee under the table, hissing, "Just pay it. They'll think you're cheap." Cheap? I'd dropped thousands already. I caved, swiping my card for another $200 meal, but inside I was seething. My phone buzzed. Bank alert. Balance dipping below my comfort zone. I'd always prided myself on financial independence, but here I was drowning in their expectations. That afternoon, we hiked to a hidden beach. The trail was steep, the air thick with humidity. I lagged behind, watching Jake laugh with Zoe, carefree. My chest ached, not just from the climb, but from the weight of it all. I'd built my life from scratch, and they were tearing it down dollar by dollar. I sat on a rock, staring at waves crashing in, and felt the shift. This wasn't love, it was a transaction, and I was the only one paying. I couldn't scream yet, but I could plan. I'd keep my cool, let them think they'd won, but I was done being their sucker. Tomorrow, I'd draw the line. They had no idea what was coming. Day 5 dawned bright, the kind of morning that promises perfection. Golden light spilling over the estate, the ocean whispering calm. Jake was buzzing, planning a beach barbecue to cap off the week. He'd booked live ukulele players, fire dancers, a spread of lobster and Wagyu beef. Cost $3,000, he bragged, like it was his money. I'd spent the night tossing and turning, my resolve hardening. No more. We set up on the sand, tiki torches flickering as the sun dipped low. The vibe was festive. Dylan cracking beers, Vivian snapping selfies, Zoe flirting with the guitarist. I tried to enjoy it, digging my toes into the warm sand, but my gut churned. Dinner ended, plates piled high with shells and skewers. Dylan slid the bill my way, $3,000 plus tip. I stared at it, then at Jake. "I'm not paying this," I said, voice steady. I didn't agree to it. Silence crashed over us, louder than the waves. Zoe snorted. "Seriously?" Vivian's lips thinned to a line. Jake laughed, a sharp, ugly sound, and stood up. "Don't be like that, Emma. You can handle it." I shook my head. "No, I'm done funding your party." His face twisted with anger, and before I could react, he lunged for my purse on the lounge chair, yanked out my wallet, and hurled it into the surf. Splash, sink, gone. Zoe cheered. "Lighten up, Emma." Dylan chuckled. Vivian smirked. Jake doubled over, laughing like it was the funniest thing ever. My heart slammed against my ribs, blood roaring in my ears. My cards, my ID, everything swallowed by the sea. They thought they'd won, humiliated me into submission, but they'd pushed me too far. I picked up my Mai Tai, ice clinking, and took a slow sip. Their laughter faltered as I locked eyes with Jake. "Hope you've got a plan to get home without me," I said, cool as the drink in my hand. His grin vanished, confusion flickering across his face. "What?" I stood, brushing sand off my legs. Flights, rooms, rentals, all booked through me. My name, my credit, good luck. I turned and walked toward the estate, their stares burning into my back. Zoe yelled something nasty, but I couldn't hear it over the waves. Inside, I locked my room door, grabbed my phone, and called the bank. "Lost my wallet," I said flatly. "Cancel everything." Next, the resort. "I'm not responsible for their charges anymore." The clerk hesitated, then agreed. My hands shook as I set the phone down, but my mind was clear, crystal, like the water I'd swam in days earlier. They'd pushed me too far. Jake pounded on my door an hour later. "Open up, Emma. This isn't funny." I didn't answer. He'd made his choice. Tossing my wallet wasn't just a prank. It was a declaration. I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every bill, every smirk, every time he'd let them walk all over me. I wasn't just angry. I was awake. They thought I'd cave, scramble to fix it. They didn't know I'd already started pulling the rug out from under them. Tomorrow they'd feel it. For now, I let the quiet settle, a strange peace creeping in. The game had changed, and I was done playing their fool. The next morning, I woke to a text from the resort. Jake's family had been moved out of the luxury villa. My cancellation of their charges had worked. They'd been downgraded to a basic motel unit across the property. No ocean view, no infinity pool, just a concrete box with a flickering AC unit. I smirked, imagining Zoe's tantrum over losing her morning mimosa tray. I told the front desk to bill them directly from now on, and when their cards failed, Dylan's declined, Vivian's maxed out, they scrambled. Jake's account was overdrawn by $187. Turns out their furniture empire was more bluster than bankroll, and I'd been the only one keeping this trip afloat. I was sipping coffee on my balcony, the sea glinting where my wallet had sunk, when my phone buzzed. A friend from home. Jake posted a jet ski vid on Insta. Looks dope. My stomach dropped. I hadn't paid for jet skis. I pulled up his profile, and there it was. Him grinning, speeding across waves, captioned, "Living my best life." I texted him, "Where'd you get the money?" His reply was instant. "Chill, babe. Sold that old ring of yours. Got $400 for it. Jet skis were worth it." My engagement ring, my grandma's sapphire. The one thing I had left of her, gone. He'd pawned it while I slept, even before the wallet incident. Rage clawed up my throat, but I swallowed it. He'd pay for that too. I blocked his number and marched to the resort safe where I'd stashed backups. Passport, spare card, emergency cash. All secure. All mine. Jake thought he'd stranded me, but he'd miscalculated. I called my bank again, froze our joint account, and transferred what little remained to my personal one. Then I emailed my lawyer. Start digging into Jake's finances. Something's off. I wasn't just cutting them off. I was gearing up for war. By noon, the fallout hit. Vivian cornered me near the hotel spa, her face pinched. "Emma, this is ridiculous. We're stuck in that awful room because of you." I shrugged. "Not my problem. Pay your own way." She sputtered. "Jake said you'd fix this." I walked away, her voice fading into the hum of the resort. Later, I overheard Dylan arguing with the manager about a bounced payment for a golf outing. Zoe sulked by the pool, whining to a waiter who clearly didn't care. They were unraveling, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction beneath the ache of that ring's loss. Jake tried my door again that night, quieter this time. "Emma, please. We're screwed without you." His voice cracked, almost pitiful. I didn't open it. He crossed a line, stealing from me, mocking me, and I wasn't here to rescue him. I sat cross-legged on the bed, replaying Grandma's voice telling me to stand tall. Losing her ring hurt like hell, but it lit a fire in me. They thought I'd break, beg, or bend. Instead, I was steeling myself. They'd feel the full weight of their mess soon. I'd make sure of it. The ocean murmured outside, steady and vast, and for the first time in days, I breathed easier. Their chaos was their problem now. 2 days after they'd been booted to the motel unit, I was eating breakfast, mango toast, black coffee, when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Davis, this is the U.S. consulate. We're investigating a claim that you've withheld your fiancé's passport, stranding him in Kauai." I nearly choked. Jake had gone nuclear, spinning a story to trap me legally. I kept my cool. "I have proof I didn't," I said, emailing the officer texts from Jake confirming I'd handed over his documents post-wallet toss, plus a time-stamped resort security clip of him chucking my wallet into the surf. "He's lying," I added. She paused. "We'll follow up. Thank you." I hung up, adrenaline spiking. He'd underestimated me again. Then my phone lit up with notifications, friends texting, "What's going on?" I opened Instagram. Zoe had posted a sob story, a selfie with red eyes captioned, "Abandoned by my brother's gold-digging fiancé. Stranded in paradise. Thanks, Emma." She'd tagged me, twisting the narrative. Comments poured in, some calling me a bitch, others asking Jake to dump the leech. My hands shook. This wasn't just a jab. It was a public smear campaign, and people I knew were buying it. I screenshot everything and forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. Add defamation to the list. Zoe wanted a war? She'd get one. I paced my room, the ocean's roar a dull hum through the glass. Jake's embassy stunt was desperate, but Zoe's post cut deeper, turning my pain into their victimhood. I called my best friend Megan back home. "They're trashing me online," I said, voice tight. She laughed darkly. "Broken cornered, Em. Let them squirm." She was right. I checked my email, my lawyer's reply. "Working on Jake's financials. Sit tight." I exhaled, steadying myself. They could lie all they wanted. Truth was my weapon, and I was loading it. That afternoon, I spotted Jake near the lobby, pleading with a clerk. "My fiancé manages the account. Can't you bill her?" The clerk shook his head. "She's blocked further charges." Jake's shoulders slumped, but his eyes caught mine. I turned away, heading for the spa. I'd booked a massage, my money, my peace. As the therapist kneaded my back, I let the tension unravel. They could scramble, slander, scheme. I wasn't breaking. Grandma's ring flashed in my mind, a dull ache, but I pushed it down. I'd mourn later. Right now, I had to fight. By evening, Megan texted again. "Zoe's post is backfiring. People are asking why Jake's not paying." I smirked. Public opinion was shifting, and I hadn't even fired back yet. I leaned on the balcony railing, the sunset bleeding red across the sky. Jake's family thought they could bury me in lies. but I was still standing. My lawyer's next update would be the real blow. I could feel it. They pushed me to the edge, and now I was pushing back, hard. The air smelled of salt and freedom, and for a moment, I felt untouchable. The next morning, my lawyer's email landed like a grenade. Found something big. Jake had been funneling money from our joint account into Aloha Ventures, a shell company he'd set up 6 months ago. He'd siphoned $12,000, my savings, into it, then used it to buy a Maui timeshare, listing Zoe as co-owner. Bank statements, property records, even a fake invoice for consulting services tied it all together. My breath caught. This wasn't just laziness or entitlement, it was theft. Calculated and cold. He'd been playing me for months, smiling while he robbed me blind. I forwarded everything to my lawyer with one word. Destroy. I needed to end this face-to-face. I called the resort, booking a private dinner on the rooftop deck. Ocean view, candlelight, the works. Tell Jake it's a truce, I said. Bring his family. The manager agreed, no questions asked. That night, I arrived early, dressed in a simple black dress, my backup card and phone tucked in a new purse. They shuffled in, Jake wary but smug, Zoe rolling her eyes, Vivian stiff, Dylan aloof. So, Jake said, sitting across from me, we working this out like adults? I didn't answer, just slid a folder across the table. He opened it, bank records, the timeshare deed, screenshots of Aloha Ventures registration. His face drained of color. What the hell is this? Dylan snatched the papers, scanning them. Jake! He barked. I leaned back, voice steady. That's what you've been hiding while pretending you're broke. That's how you stole my money, my savings, while tossing my wallet in the ocean and crying to the consulate. Zoe shrieked, "That's a lie!" I pulled out my phone, played a clip, her name on a contractor list, paid $2,000 from my cash. Her jaw dropped, voice cracking. I didn't... Jake stood, chair scraping. I can explain. Dylan cut him off, eyes blazing. Is this true? Jake stammered. No, I mean, look, it's not... Vivian gasped, hand to her chest like she'd been shot. I kept going. You didn't just use me, Jake. You stole from me, planned it, and Zoe helped. I looked at them all. Dylan's shock, Vivian's horror, Zoe's tears. Enjoy paradise without my money. I stood, folder in hand. Jake lunged after me. Emma, wait. Security, 2 guys I'd tipped off earlier, blocked him. Sir, sit down, one said firmly. He froze, yelling, You're ruining me. I didn't turn back. Outside, I leaned against a palm tree, the night air cool on my skin. My chest heaved. Anger, relief, a weird thrill. They thought I'd fold, but I'd flip the table. My lawyer was already filing for an emergency asset freeze and fraud charges. Jake's smugness, Zoe's lies, their whole facade. It was crumbling. I walked to my room, the stars sharp overhead, and felt something snap free. Grandma's ring was gone, but this was reclaiming my life. The next day, I got a call from Megan. Jake's freaking out, called me from a borrowed phone. Says he's sorry, wants you back. I laughed bitterly. He's sorry he got caught. She snorted. Zoe deleted her posts. People are asking questions. Good. I checked my email. Resort security had reported Jake trying to sneak into the VIP lounge claiming my name. They kicked him out. His family was scrambling, borrowing cash from strangers to eat. I didn't care. My lawyer's next move was coming, and it would hit harder than they could imagine. I spent the afternoon on the beach, waves lapping at my feet. The hurt lingered. Jake's betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal, a knife twisted slow. But I wasn't broken. I'd trusted him, loved him, and he'd used me. Now I was using the truth to bury him. The sun sank, painting the sky gold, and I felt a quiet power settle in. They'd underestimated me, thought I'd cry, cave, or run. Instead, I'd stayed, fought, and won. This wasn't over, but the tide had turned, and I was riding it. 3 days after the rooftop showdown, my lawyer called. It's done, he said. We'd filed to dissolve our joint assets. Technically not a divorce, but close enough. The evidence was ironclad. Jake's Aloha Venture scam handed me half the Maui timeshare value, $6,000 back in my account, and a court order for him to repay every Kauai expense I'd covered, down to the $12 coconut Zoe had thrown at me in a fit. The consulate wasn't buying his passport story either. They'd flagged him for review after seeing my proof. I'd won, clean and legal. I stood on my balcony, the ocean stretching out where my wallet had drowned. The ring still stung. Grandma's sapphire, a piece of her I'd never get back. But as the waves rolled in, steady and relentless, I felt something stronger. Me. Unbroken. Jake's betrayal had gutted me, stripped away the future I'd dreamed of, but it hadn't taken my spine. I'd trusted too much, loved too blindly, and they'd seen a mark. Now they saw a wall. Jake emailed that night, long, pleading, "I've changed, Emma, please." I deleted it unread. Zoe's Instagram went dark after her followers turned on her, and Vivian left a voicemail I skipped. Dylan remained silent. They'd clung to my money like it defined them, and without it, they were ghosts. I booked a first-class flight home, my payout funding a solo trip to Iceland next month. Geysers, glaciers, no leeches. The resort staff waved as I checked out, one whispering, "You're a legend." I smiled. Maybe I was. Back home, I unpacked, Kauai sand still dusting my shoes. Peace wasn't the roar of revenge. It was this quiet, the weight of their lies gone. Jake thought I'd crumble. Instead, I'd built something new. Respect wasn't his to give. It was mine to take. I sat by my window, city lights blinking, and knew I hadn't just survived them. I'd reclaimed myself. 6 months later, I'm in a coffee shop 3 towns over from my new apartment when a familiar voice calls my name. I turn to find Vivian standing awkwardly by the pastry case, looking smaller somehow in her unbranded sweater. "Emma," she says, voice lacking its usual edge. "I didn't expect to see you." I nod coolly. "Vivian." She hesitates, then asks if she can sit. Against my better judgment, I gesture to the empty chair. "I want to apologize," she says, surprising me. What Jake did, what we all did, it was wrong. I sip my latte, saying nothing. "Jake's in serious trouble," she continues. "The fraud charges stuck. He's looking at possible jail time." I feel nothing, not satisfaction, not pity, just emptiness where love once lived. "Dylan and I separated," she adds, twisting her now bare ring finger. "The furniture business was already failing. The divorce finished it." I finally speak. "Why are you telling me this?" She looks down. "I thought you deserved to know, and..." She pulls something from her purse, a small velvet box. "We found this in Jake's things." Inside is Grandma's sapphire ring, slightly scratched but intact. "He never sold it," Vivian explains. "He lied to hurt you." My hands tremble as I take it. The last piece of Grandma returned. "Thank you," I say, voice tight. She nods. "I should go." As she stands, she pauses. "You were too good for our family, Emma. I see that now." After she leaves, I sit there holding the ring, emotions washing through me. Relief, sadness, closure. I slip it onto my right hand where it belongs, no longer a symbol of false promises. On my way home, I get a text from my new boyfriend, Tom, the antithesis of Jake. Honest, hardworking, kind. "Dinner tonight? Made reservations at that Thai place you love." I smile, typing back. "Perfect. I'll pay my half." A small thing, but important. I've learned my lessons about money and love and how they should and shouldn't intersect. That evening, as Tom and I split the check, laughing over pad thai, I feel Grandma's ring on my finger. A reminder not of what I lost, but of what I found. My worth, my voice, my boundaries. Jake thought throwing my wallet into the ocean would drown me. Instead, it taught me to swim against the current. The best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving on your own terms. When Tom asks about the ring, I tell him the whole story for the first time. He listens, really listens, then takes my hand. "You're incredible," he says simply. "I know. And I'll never let anyone make me forget it again." Back at my apartment, I hang a new print on my wall, a photograph I took in Kauai of waves crashing against rocks, not as a reminder of betrayal, but of strength. Those waves seemed destructive, but they were actually reshaping the shoreline, creating something new. Just like me. I've kept tabs on the Maui timeshare, my court-awarded half. Instead of selling it, I'm donating my weeks to a charity that provides vacations for single parents who could never afford Hawaii otherwise, turning something tainted into something beautiful. Zoe tried contacting me once, a lengthy message about how she was manipulated by Jake. I didn't respond. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. My savings have recovered. My career has flourished. Ironically, the story of catching financial fraud made me valuable in corporate security marketing. I give workshops now on protecting yourself from financial abuse in relationships. I still have nightmares sometimes about standing on that beach, watching my wallet sink beneath the waves, feeling utterly powerless. But then I wake up, feel Grandma's ring on my finger, and remember, I wasn't powerless. I was just waiting for the right moment to show my strength. 1 year to the day after the Hawaii incident, I receive an unexpected LinkedIn message from Dylan. "Emma, I'm hoping you'll consider meeting. There are things I need to say in person. No excuses, just accountability." I stare at the message for a long time. Part of me wants to delete it, to keep that chapter permanently closed. But another part, the part that's been healing, is curious. I've come far enough that seeing him can't hurt me anymore. We meet at a neutral coffee shop downtown. Dylan looks a decade older than when I last saw him on that rooftop in Kauai. The expensive watch is gone, replaced by a simple leather band. His designer clothes swapped for a plain button-down. "Thank you for coming," he begins, hands wrapped around his mug to hide their trembling. "I've been in therapy for 8 months. Part of my recovery is making amends." I don't respond, just wait. "What we did to you was financial abuse. There's no other name for it," he continues. "I'm not here to ask forgiveness, I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I understand now what we did." "Why?" I finally ask. "You had money. Why target me?" He looks ashamed. "We didn't. Not at first. The furniture business was failing for years. I'd been pulling equity from our house, maxing credit lines. The Hawaii trip was supposed to be our last hurrah before bankruptcy." "So I was just convenient?" I say coolly. "Convenient and successful," he admits. "When you paid that first bill without question, I saw an opportunity. It was wrong. Despicable. And Jake?" Dylan's eyes water. "Jake knew everything. The business, the debt, all of it. He'd been raised watching me fake success, and he learned how to use people." He pauses. "He's serving 18 months. The fraud conviction destroyed what was left of his future." I feel a complex emotion, not quite satisfaction, not quite pity. "And Zoe?" "Still blames you," he says honestly. "Some people never learn. She's working retail in Phoenix now, living with roommates. The entitlement is hard to shake." "And Vivian?" "Rebuilding. We're both in debt management programs. She's teaching piano lessons now. It suits her." We sit in silence for a moment. I realize I don't hate them anymore. I don't feel much of anything. They've become characters in an old story, not active forces in my life. "I don't regret what happened," I tell him. "Not anymore. It taught me something important about myself." He nods. "You're formidable, Emma. We never stood a chance." As we part ways, he hands me an envelope. It's not much, but it's a start. My portion of what we owe you. Inside is a cashier's check for $2,300. Not even close to what they took. But the gesture matters. Not for forgiveness, but for closure. Tom proposes 6 months later, not with an extravagant gesture, but during a quiet moment while we're making Sunday breakfast together. The ring is modest, chosen with care, and he immediately adds, "We can pick a different one if you'd prefer." I kiss him, laughing through tears. "It's perfect because you asked before spending. That's the most romantic thing possible." We plan a small wedding with separate checking accounts and a joint savings fund we both contribute to equally. My new in-laws insist on hosting the rehearsal dinner, but check with us on the budget first. These little respectful gestures mean everything now. When the wedding day arrives, I wear Grandma's sapphire on my right hand, not as my engagement ring, but as my talisman. My boss gives a toast at the reception. To Emma, who taught our entire office that setting boundaries isn't just personal, it's professional wisdom. I beam at Tom across the table, marveling at how different this feels, being valued not for what I can provide, but for who I am. 3 years after Hawaii, I publish a book titled When Love Costs Too Much: Identifying Financial Abuse in Relationships. It becomes a surprise bestseller, and I'm invited to speak at women's conferences. At one event in Seattle, I'm signing books when I look up to find Zoe in line, clutching a copy. My pen freezes mid-signature. She looks different. Hair pulled back simply, no designer clothes, a name tag indicating she's staff at the conference center. "I didn't know you'd be speaking," she says awkwardly. "I work here now." I nod, waiting. "Your book," she continues, pushing it toward me. "I recognized us in Chapter 3, The Vacation Predators." She swallows. "You didn't use our names, but I knew." "It wasn't about revenge," I tell her. "It was about warning signs." "I know." She shifts uncomfortably. "I'm taking financial literacy classes now. Learning to stand on my own." I sign her book, adding a simple note. "Growth is possible." She takes it, hesitating. "I'm sorry, Emma, really sorry." I don't say it's okay because it wasn't. Instead, I offer something true. "I hope you find your way." On my 35th birthday, Tom surprises me with tickets to Hawaii. Not Kauai, but the Big Island. "Are you sure?" he asks. "We can go anywhere else." I kiss him. Hawaii doesn't belong to them. I'm taking it back. We stay in a modest beachfront cottage, splitting expenses as we always do, keeping separate receipts in a shared folder. These financial habits aren't about distrust, they're about respect. Standing on black sand beaches, watching lava pour into the ocean, I feel a profound sense of peace. I take a photo of the spot where new land is being created from destruction, the perfect metaphor for rebuilding. That night, under stars brighter than I remembered, Tom asks what I'm thinking. "I'm thinking about value," I tell him. "Not just money, but worth, what we bring to each other's lives." He takes my hand, understanding. "Balance." "Exactly." I squeeze his fingers. Jake's family saw relationships as transactions. Everything had a price, and they always expected someone else to pay it. Tom nods. "And us?" "We're investors," I smile. "Equal partners in something that grows." 5 years after the Hawaii incident, I receive a notification. Jake has been released from prison. For a moment, old anxiety flickers, but it fades quickly. He has no power over me anymore. A week later, a simple email arrives from an unfamiliar address. "I hope you're well. I'm sorry for everything. Jay." I don't respond. Some chapters don't need epilogues. Instead, I donate to a financial literacy program for young women, trading negative energy for positive action. The organization sends me photos of graduates holding their certificates, faces bright with newfound confidence. This, I realize, is the final transformation of that Hawaiian disaster, turning pain into purpose. When Tom and I welcome our daughter 3 years later, I look into her tiny face and make a silent promise. She'll grow up understanding both generosity and boundaries. She'll know her worth isn't in what she gives away, but in how she values herself and others. We name her Hope, not because we're sentimental, but because she represents everything I found after losing my way. New beginnings, strength discovered in unexpected places. Sometimes as I rock her to sleep, I tell her the story of Hawaii, not the ugly details, but the moral. There was once a woman who thought love meant sacrifice, until she learned that real love is built on respect. And when she's old enough, I'll give her grandma's sapphire ring, not as a token of romance, but as a reminder that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads you to what you truly need. The waves that threatened to drown me in Kauai became the current that carried me home to myself. Jake thought throwing my wallet into the ocean would leave me powerless. Instead, it washed away my fear of standing alone. That's the thing about the tide. It always turns. And when it does, you can either be dragged under or learn to navigate the changing waters. I chose to swim.